I'm Jeanette. I am the designer behind Jeanette Knits, and welcome to a quick tutorial on how to figure out where to place buttonholes on a cardigan with buttons. I am working on my ostinato cardigan, and it's a very fitted set-in sleeve top-down seamless pattern that's coming out soon. And I was just trying to figure out how to place 13 buttons on a button band that is 146 stitches long. Usually you are asked to place them evenly along the button band, but for me that always means, okay, I need to calculate it in stitches because I don't know another way. So in the rest of the video, I'm gonna show you my Google spreadsheet calculator for how I figured out how many stitches to put in between all of the markers I have here. I hope you find that useful. So here we go. I have enlisted the help of a Google spreadsheet to make my calculations easier. And some variables that I need to know is the total number of stitches. I have 146, and the number of buttons I want to place is, for my case, 13. And I have chosen to use a yarn over buttonhole that takes up 2 stitches. So I know that for each of the buttonholes, I will need to use up 2 stitches. And because I have 13 buttons, that means that in total for all the buttonholes, I will be using the number of buttons times the number of stitches for one buttonhole, and that is 26 total stitches will be used up by all the buttonholes. What that means is that I have the total number of stitches minus the buttonhole stitches, and I have now 120 stitches remaining to divide for the sections between the buttonholes. I also know that I can't just place a buttonhole at the start or at the end of the button band, which means I need to add some buffer. You can pick 4, 5, 6, whatever, depending on the gauge and how big your buttons are. I think 4 or 5 is a good number. I will pick number 5, and the reason for that is because I need to have an odd number of stitches before my first buttonhole. I'm using a 1x1 rib, which is an even number stitch pattern. But for the buttonhole, I really want for the K2 together to align with the knit stitch. And that means my buttonhole would have to start with the purl stitch. And that to get to the purl stitch, I need an odd number of stitches. So this is it's a bit more advanced. Like if you didn't care about aligning the buttonhole with the rest of the ribbing pattern, or if you were just not using 1x1 rib, then this is probably a bit simpler. But for that reason, I'm picking 5. And because I have the start and an end of a buttonhole, that is why I need to remove those stitches taken up by the buffer from the total stitch count as well. So for all the sections, I will have 120 minus 5. Sorry, not minus 5. I will have twice 5 because I have it at the start and the end. Next, I need to figure out how many sections I have between the buttonholes to divvy up the 110 stitches. So I have 13 buttons, as I said here. But because we start with a button and end with a button, we have with a button, the section between buttons, a button, section between buttons. So that means we always have one less section than we have the buttons. In my case, that will be 13 minus 1. So I have 12 sections between the buttonholes. So this would typically be quite easy if I had really nice numbers. For example, if I had 120 stitches here, I could see that for each section, I just need to take 10 stitches and easy peasy. But because I have strange numbers, I have 110 stitches and I need to divide them by 12 sections. It gives me a very icky stitch count. Obviously, I can't knit 9.1 stitches or 9.2 stitches. I need a round number. And because I cannot get more stitches than I have to pick the smaller whole integer here, which in my case will be 9. So that's cool. But if I only use 9 stitches between some sections, then I'll have some stitches remain extra for the last section, making the last section very long. So I need to figure out how many stitches I have extra if I used 9 stitches everywhere. And I can do that by extra stitches, by multiplying the 9 stitches times the number of sections, and that means I will be using 108 stitches. So I just need to subtract that from this number. So I have 2 extra stitches that I have to place somewhere. So I would have 2 sections with 10 stitches and then 10 sections with 9 stitches. That sounds about right. However, here lies my problem. That would be the end of the story if I didn't want a perfect alignment for the buttonhole with the ribbing pattern. If I went to the first buttonhole after 5 stitches, I would end up on a purl stitch. I'd have a nice alignment, but on the next section, if I move only 9 stitches, which is an odd number from my previous buttonhole, I would end up on a knit stitch first, which means my buttonhole wouldn't align nicely with the ribbing pattern. And I do not like that, so I will be adjusting this even more. I now know that I have 2 sections that will take up 10 stitches, because those are the extra stitches remaining. And then I have number of sections that need adjusting. So I have 12 sections in total. I have these 2 sections that I know already I will have 10 stitches to use. And so I have 10 sections that need some adjustment. And the closest adjustment I can see to ensure that I got an even number for each section is that for some sections I use 8 and for some sections I use 10. And it would make sense for me to just half in 8 and half in 10. That would make it very easy. Number of sections with 8 stitches will be a half of those sections that need adjusting, and the number of sections with 10 stitches will be the same as the 8 plus the extra 2 that I already had. So here is my final count. I will have 5 stitches as a buffer, then 2 stitches for buttonhole, then I'll have 5 sections of 8 stitches between buttonholes, and then 7 sections of 10 stitches with buttonholes, and then finally the buffer. And I can cross check all of that to make sure I have 146 stitches. And yeah, what's the best way to do that? I will start with the buffer stitch plus a buttonhole plus 8 times, sorry, 5 times, so 5 times 8 stitches plus the buttonholes, because I'm actually counting, including the buttonhole next to the section into the stitch count here, and plus 7 times, again, 10 stitches plus the buttonhole, and finally I end with another buffer. Please be 146. Yes, it is 146. So I can go ahead and place my locking stitch markers on my button band in this fashion. Well, I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, shoot them in the comments. And happy buttonholing!